Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to the shop. Today we are talking about spraying, how I spray all my stuff. This is a topic I get asked about a lot. So I'm going to show you my process. Let's jump right in. All right, so spraying finish, even on Instagram over the years, I've always been kind of hesitant to share a lot of information about it because first of all, it's one of the things that I was not really taught by a professional. When I worked in the cabinet shop that I worked at, I did basically everything but the finishing. We had a couple guys and that was all they did. So I was never really taught. Everything else I was taught was by guys who had tons and tons of experience. Spraying, however, as I started to do side jobs and then eventually going off on my own, I kind of had to learn that. And I'm sure a lot of you know, if you go online, if you go on YouTube, Google, Instagram, all that stuff and start researching finishing, it is overwhelming. The amount of information out there is crazy. Everybody has their different methods of finishing and spraying. Everybody has their opinions. Everybody uses different products. There's a ton of different products, water-based, solvent-based, a million different brands, different kinds of guns, HVLP, airless, air-assisted. I felt overwhelmed by it at least. And I think that's one of the reasons why I get a lot of questions about this, mostly on Instagram. So I'm going to share my process, what's worked for me over the years. Yeah, maybe you can learn something. If not, at least learn what you don't want to do, maybe. I have a few things already being sprayed. I have some drawer fronts here that aren't sanded yet. I'm going to kind of take you through that whole process as well. So these are sanded through the drum sander, but they're not sanded with the orbital yet. So my drum sander, it's a dual drum. I have 100 in the front, 150 grit in the back. So when these go through, you're gonna get obviously some lines coming across the rails. So we need to sand that all out. And I'll bring you in close and try and show you with the camera. The lines are kind of hard to see. From this point, I am just centering the panel in the back because my panel's floating. You can see I've got the gap around here. And then I'll brad nail it in the back, and then those get filled. We'll jump in to the primer. I'll show you the pumps I'm using, what product I'm using, and all that. So basically what I'm doing right here, if you guys remember in my door making video, this panel's just stuck a little bit. I'm using 1/2-inch panels that are rabbited all around that are floating in here. So right now I'm just getting it centered so I have a nice even gap all the way around. These are drawer fronts, so you're not gonna see this at all anyway, but I still like to get it centered. I'm just gonna brad nail this in. I've got a 5/8 brad nail in there, and these I'm not actually even going to fill on the drawer front because like I said, the drawer is going to be back here. You're not going to see it, but so that's my reveal all the way around. Just get that centered in there, and then I'll get this thing nice and sanded. So these, like I said, these come out of the drum sander at 100 grit, or 100 in the front, 150 in the back. So they still need to be hit with the DA. So with the poplar, I use 150 grit on the orbital, and that does fine. Gets all the scratch marks out and everything. Do the edges, then go around and break all the edges, fill anything that I need to. If I do need to fill on paint grade stuff, this 3M acrylic red glazing putty. I like this stuff. This is good for just like small little pinholes or little scratches. Anything kind of bigger, it doesn't work for. It's only good for really small stuff, and it dries almost instantly, so that's really nice. Anything bigger, imperfections or stuff like that, I'll use Bondo. Try to be as minimal with the Bondo as I can. you know, if I ended up with like a knot in something or something that I needed to fill. But most likely I'm not gonna have that issue because I'm pretty picky when I'm making these things, picking my material. So yeah. So all my drawer fronts are sanded and ready to go. Broke all the edges, all that stuff. I've got my primer here. We're ready to go into the spray room and start spraying. I'll give you a walkthrough in there. So this whole process for actually the time you spend actually spraying a drawer front or a door or whatever is a very tiny percentage of this whole, like I said, of this whole process. So most of your time is spent sanding, prepping, then you spray, sand in between coats, spray, sand some more, spray. It's kind of a tedious process, but if you take your time and prep everything well and sand everything nice, you're gonna end up with a really nice finished result. Doesn't mean the spraying, you kind of got to know what you're doing there too, but most of the time is spent in the prep work. This is the stuff I'm using now. This is this Gemini Evo water-based, I guess it's a water-based lacquer, and it is incredible. I've only been spraying this for a couple months. I was spraying pre-catalyzed solvent-based lacquer before that for 5 years, more than 5 years. I really liked it. It was really good. It's easy to work with, lays down really nice, but it's harsh. I have neighbors here. I don't want to be breathing in lacquer for my whole career. It's going to be a long time, and it's really not good. And I do wear a respirator. I even wear a respirator when I'm spraying this, just because this doesn't smell, not like the lacquer at all, but you don't want to be breathing in that, like the overspray and all that. And even with the respirator, when you're spraying that solvent-based lacquer, when you're spraying a lot of stuff, it still gets through. Switch to this. Really like this stuff. So I'm going to talk about how I spray this. I'm not going to touch on how I used to spray with the lacquer because it is a little bit different. And I'm also still kind of dialing things in with this as far as my process. So what I've been doing, I've tried a few different things. I always am going with 2 coats of primer usually, 1 or 2 coats top coat. So the primer of this stuff is pretty thick, and I'm not thinning it at all because, like I said, I'm using an airless pump, so I don't really need to thin it. I'm doing 2 very light coats of primer, especially the first coat of primer is very light. It dries quick, I can knock it down, and then I can hit it with another coat with a little bit heavier of a coat on the second one, and then I'll knock it down again, and then I'll do my top coat. After I spray my first coat, I'm really looking for imperfections. After you spray primer, any little imperfections, all that stuff is gonna really start coming through. So then I can go back, fill anything that needs to get filled, sand anything, hit down any whatever, and then hit it with another coat. Another thing, especially with dark colors, the graininess, especially in this poplar, wants to pull through a lot more actually with the lacquer. But with this stuff, I feel like it's thicker and it builds and like fills things in a little bit better. So after that second coat of primer, I can sand it and it is dead flat and nice. And then my top coat just lays down over that really well. So I have tried to do I've done some tests and stuff with this. I've tried to do like a little bit heavier of a first coat, and it still works good. You still get a good result. Takes a little longer to dry, and I feel like just a couple lighter coats of primer is just working better for me. So that's what we're gonna do. So I'm just gonna walk you into the spray room. So just to give you an idea of where it's at, it's back in this corner. In this room, I believe it is 12 across this way by 17 this way. Super nice to have a room that is separate and dedicated for spraying. So I've got this little table over here. I've kind of just been mixing stuff and storing stuff over here. And then there is a door in here, which is nice until I get my spray booth, which is coming in 2 weeks. It is on delivery. I've been just putting this fan in the door, obviously opening the door, and that's been my exhaust. So it's a spray room. It's kind of messy, nothing glamorous about it. But here are my pumps. So I've got 2 of these. I'm gonna pick up another one. These Graco X5 airless pumps. These things are not super expensive. They're like 300 something bucks from Home Depot. The new spray booth, it's actually just like a big open faced thing. So it's 10 feet wide. It comes to about here, about a foot away from the door. And it's basically gonna stick out to about right here. And it's just a big wall, basically of filters with a big fan in it. So that thing is gonna be sweet. It's custom made, not cheap. It's gonna be really nice. It actually just vents right inside because we're spraying water-based. We don't have to go outside. So that's really nice too. Yeah, it's definitely gonna make this space feel a little bit smaller, but like the drying rack that I had in here, but most likely I'll be, when I'm spraying a ton of stuff, drying rack will be out here. When I started spraying, I had a Fuji spray, Q5 turbine, HVLP, because everybody was, oh, these things are so amazing. So that was like my first thing getting started in spraying. Spent a ton of money, got a couple different guns, and those things are not cheap. I was into it for a couple grand, sprayed with it for about a year, and just could never get really good results. It always couldn't get rid of the orange peel. It was tough. I could never get really good results that I was going for. One day I had like a big closet job with a ton of stuff to spray, and I just literally went to Home Depot, bought one of these pumps, and it was awesome. It is going from HVLP to this thing is like a fire hose. A little bit getting used to. So I use a 311 tip on the gun. So the first number is half of the width of the fan that it sprays. So it's 3, so it's a 6-inch fan. And then the 11 is like 11 thousandths is the opening, something like that, 0.011 inches. That's the size of the opening on the tip. And they have other ones like fine finish tips and stuff, and I've used those before too, but I really have gotten used to the 311 and I like it, so that's what I use. And with this water-based stuff, like I said, I'm not thinning it. I haven't needed to. So yeah, I'm gonna mix up this primer and we'll get a couple coats laid down. All right, so first coat of primer is done. just looking at these real quick at the face, and there's not anything really jumping out at me that needs to be filled or taken care of. So we'll sand these. I sand in between coats with 320. I get everything. This inside edge here, the panel, obviously the stiles and rails. Make sure I really get everything smooth, and then we'll hit it with one more light coat, and then they'll be ready for the top coat. So I'll hand sand all the edges and the panel. Make sure I'm getting that rounded over edge as well. And then I'll come back after with the orbital and hit all the flat surfaces on the top. Got my 2 coats on here, sanded. This drawer front is looking good. It's ready for top coat. So with these, with whites especially, I can usually get away after 2 coats of primer, just laying down a nice crosshatch in 1 coat. I'm usually pretty comfortable with that, but sometimes I'll do 2 coats. But darker colors, I'm always going 2 coats primer, 2 coats finish, because the darker colors, things kind of stand out more. All right, so for my top coat, I'm using the same Gemini Evo product. This is a 20 sheen, which has a little bit, if you know your sheens, this has like, I guess it would be like a satin. It's not super glossy. Typically with the lighter colors, at least so far with this stuff, I've been doing the 20 sheen. And then I always sprayed, when I sprayed lacquer, darker colors, I would always do like a flat, because with the satins and the glossier finishes, the little imperfections really come out. And I always thought the flat kind of looks better, unless somebody requested it. My samples, I'm always making flat, and with the lacquer, it still had a little bit of a sheen to it. So I did a 10 sheen on a couple of the darker projects that I've done with this stuff, and it comes out really good. I've also done darker colors in the 20 sheen with this as well, and I feel like it just like covers better than the lacquer. Not seeing like the wood, it's easier to get rid of like the wood grain coming through, like the texture and stuff. So to think about when you're actually spraying, or how you build your project. Obviously, you want to think about how you're going to finish it. Spray everything as much as you can laying flat. You're not going to get runs when you lay it flat. Everything's going to lay down really nice. Obviously, it's not always possible. Like for this job, even I have a cabinet that I have to spray the sides and they're standing up. And this actually has some pretty good vertical hold to it, this Evo product. So it's just, yeah, spray as much as you can flat. If I have open bookcases or boxes like that, I will spray all my parts before I put them together, so I can spray them all flat. It's very difficult to spray an open box. Even if you leave the back off, it's still tricky. So that's what I've been doing. I'll leave everything in parts, spray it all, then assemble it, and then the finish is freaking beautiful on it, and everything goes together. Looks really good. So. All right, so I'll bring it in close. Got a door here. This is the back of the door. You can see that reveal all the way around, nice and even. The edges of the door really get 1, 2, 3, 4. Depending on how many coats I do, the edges get double. So if the back of the door gets 2 coats of, or if the door gets 2 coats of primer, 2 coats, 2 top coats, the edges are getting 4 coats of primer and 4 top coats. Light coats, because I hit the edges when I do the back, I hit the edges when I do the front. So they're getting double. Mind you, it's very light. Another thing, when it was more of an issue with the lacquer, you spray the back, spray the edges, spray the back, let it dry, you flip it over, spray the edges, spray the top, and you get a little bit of overspray on the back. Over the years, trying to figure out how to get rid of that, I was never able to totally get rid of it. So the back of the door would always end up feeling, it wouldn't be rough, but it wouldn't be quite as nice as the front, because that lacquer with the overspray, when it hits, it kind of reactivates and whatever. With this stuff, it's not as much of an issue, because when the back is already dry and then you hit the front with the overspray, it's really just like dust on there, and it doesn't make it feel rough. So this is much better for that. And then I've seen guys actually spray the back, spray the edges, and then actually mask off the back of the door and spray the front. Could do that. That would eliminate it. It's also a lot more time and a lot more work. So yeah, where I'm at with these, I'm pretty happy with the results, especially how the back ends up feeling in the end. Here's the final coat. One of the things that's very important is, it's kind of hard to see with the shadow, but that line in there, I want to make sure it's not connected, if that makes sense, or filled in with the paint. So I've got a perfect reveal down there in that corner. That way down the road, things move, they don't crack. I don't think I'll have an issue with that, however, with the water base. All right, so these things are done. We've got 2 coats of primer, 2 top coats, or no, I only did 1 top coat on these, but I did a good coat, crosshatch pattern, and these came out really nice. I'm still getting used to the water-based stuff. So when you first lay it down, it looks really good. And then as it starts to dry, it always looks like kind of grainy and not like really great. And I keep forgetting that I need to just let it completely dry and flash off and all that stuff, and then it looks really good. And these look really good. So these, like I said, I have 4 drawer fronts for a bank of drawers, and then I actually posted about this, or I posted this thing on my Instagram of this like frame that I made with, it's basically like a jam with a casing on the outside. It's in the upstairs in this house, there's like this little doorway to a mechanical room, and this is just gonna go in there. So I'll get those doors mounted and show you what that looks like. It actually, we're gonna look pretty cool. All right, so these doors I made, these are actually like 7/8 thick, because with this jam and with the jam and the frame and the casing, basically, it's was 1 inch thick. So I made these 7/8, so when they close with an 1/8 inch bumper, they'll be nice and flush. And it's basically like inset. And I'll show you, this frame has like a 3/8. I'm using a half overlay hinge here because the frame, I did a 3/8 kind of reveal all around that It'll make sense. I'll show you the frame. And that'll, yeah. So I'm using a full over or a half overlay hinge on these doors. If you want to see how I make the doors, I have a 2-part series that I'll put up in the corner right here, and you can go and watch it and see how I make them. Actually, it's that whole stack that's right over there. You can't see it right now, but. And I also did a video last week or 2 weeks ago, I can't even remember, on cabinet hardware. And you can watch that as well and learn what the hardware I'm using. This is the frame that is gonna go into this opening. The bottom is actually a little long. This will get cut down a little bit. And it's just a carpet floor. And this is like in this attic kind of space. And it goes into some mechanical stuff. So anyways, I've got a 3/8 reveal all around here. So that's why I'm using a half overlay hinge. So it'll get me basically over, I'll cover over that gap, and it's gonna act as a door stop when I put a bumper on there. And then my doors will be nice and flush with this. So we'll get these things hung. So this is basically an inset doors, but I'm using a half overlay hinge because of the inside, that reveal I just showed you. So the nice thing about inset doors is it's easy to hang them, and you can get them right where you want them. Because with overlay doors, you can't really do this. I've got my spacer down at the bottom. I mean, I guess you could do this if you had the cabinet on an overlay door sitting on your bench. But when I hang my doors on an overlay cabinet, I like to lay the cabinet down and then hang them. Next time I do that, I'll show you guys. But this is really easy because I can just get it right where I want it and screw these in. So these are not, gotta be careful here, because if I open the doors and just leave it, this thing's gonna want to tip. But these screws back here are not, if you've ever tried to adjust them, and the Phillips, it works, but it doesn't seem to be just the right size. It's because it's not. It's a posi drive, so it's a little bit different than your standard number 2 Phillips. This probably isn't smart, because I don't want to tip this thing over. Throw some bumpers on there. That is pretty good. And there we go. Got everything adjusted pretty good. Once this is installed and perfectly plumb and level, we'll get it dialed in perfect, but not bad. See if I can get you up close, show you the finish. You can see there, came out really nice. Really, really liking this Gemini stuff. And then here's the bank of drawers. Drawers are not in yet. I've just got this laying on its back. Drawers are right over there. But see the finish on it, came out really nice. Really happy with this stuff. This is kind of a weird cabinet in a closet. It's pretty tall. So it gets it's like 42 inches tall. A little different than your standard lower. But, all right, so that's it, guys. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully maybe you learned something. I'm just, again, showing you my process. Still kind of getting it dialed with this product. Like I said, the drying times are a little different. Stuff like that, figuring out how thick or thin to lay down coats. So I'm still experimenting a little bit, but definitely going to experiment a little bit with thinning the primer. But the results I'm getting with this stuff, I'm really happy with. And then I was just at a job today, little built-in that we did. Greg installed it a couple weeks ago. I had to go and add a couple glass shelves, but there was a couple little things on the fillers that I needed to touch up. And man, the touching stuff up with this water-based stuff is amazing. Having to do it with lacquer is very difficult because you take a little brush and try and brush on some lacquer and it activates everything else, and you can make a mess of things really quick. So that's another really good thing about this stuff. So questions, comments, concerns, all that kind of stuff, leave them in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you on the next one. We're gonna be making this cool walnut shoe cabinet storage thing. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Peace.